Hi, my name is Keith Reed. I'm the editor of Fuels Market News. I'm sure it's going to be an excellent, entertaining, and educational webinar. We're taking a look at optimizing the entire fueling experience with frictionless fuel management. I'm going to be your moderator today. We're going to have two presenters, Scott Barrett, who's the Director of Fuels Pricing, Supply, and Logistics for the Wills Group, and David Fries, who's the Chief Product Officer for Titan Cloud. I'm going to let each of the individuals introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their operations in more detail, starting with Scott. Scott?
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate that. For those of you that are not familiar with the Wills Group, we are a mid-sized fuel marketer and C-store operator operating in the Mid-Atlantic, specifically Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, nearly 300 stores, multiple channels of trade. And we are the largest Shell fuel marketer in the Mid-Atlantic, actually. You may know us as our convenience store brand, Dash It, which you've got a picture of here. We're super excited about a new branding, a new offer to our customers. The store in this picture here just happens to be one of our most recent NTIs in Northern Virginia. So it's met with rave reviews from our customers. I've heard people say it's the Whole Foods of convenience stores. It's the Chick-fil-A of gas stations. Pretty amazing concept. It started out very successful for us, and really has energized the entire company around a whole new offering, a whole new way to serve our customers. And with that, we love to give back to our communities. We're big about participating in communities, giving back to communities. And you see some of the pictures here from our grand opening that we had not too long ago, maybe about 6 months ago. But super excited to be with you all today, and I look forward to getting going.
So hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm David Fries. I'm Chief Product Officer at Titan Cloud Software. As the name implies, we're a cloud software provider. Founded in 2012. At this point, we're pretty widely, connected, if you will, across the United States. Over 65,000 sites and ATGs. We monitor about half the retail fuel in the United States. And we're focused on fuel asset optimization across environmental compliance, fuel operations, maintenance, applying the latest in data science to solving some of the industry's thorniest problems, taking advantage of the kind of advancements in cloud computing and IoT and those things to accomplish that. So I'm here today kind of to give a kind of an industry perspective around what other customers of Titan are seeing in some of these topics, as I have a pretty good preview across, hundreds of customers and, again, all those sites. Again, a lot of we have large, medium, and small retailers, large fleets. We have a pretty good cross section. So looking forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Going to start off with a little state of the industry. I also want to remind everybody, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. We won't be addressing questions during the actual presentation, but feel free to enter any question you have. And, when we get to the question answer portion, we'll get started on it. State of the industry, the convenience fueling industry is really a dominant retailer in the retail scene. We have a store count that increased by 1.5% in 2023 to over 150,000 locations. If you add that up, it's nearly equal to all grocery, drugstores, dollar stores, Starbucks, and McDonald's combined. You have roughly 160 million transactions conducted each day. That means that C-stores serve up about 50% of the U.S. population on any given day. C-stores sell about 80% of the fuel that's purchased in America. And, if you probably dig into the numbers and you look at some of the other things like marinas and whatnot, it's probably a little bit higher than that even. We've had some pretty good margins the last couple of years due to some of the volatility that's gone on in the wholesale markets. And, that's been nice to have, but it's certainly not the traditional way things have worked out over the years. And as always, 1/3 of the fuel customers also purchase in store, and getting them to your site, getting them in the store is, of course, an optimal situation to be profitable. 27% of consumers are loyal to convenience brands. They average 19 trips in 12 months and $19.50 per order. And Loyalty, of course, is critically important to maintaining those numbers is, quality customer service. And we'll discuss a little later on how even on the fuel side of things, your brand impact can suffer if you're not keeping those customers happy. Now, Scott's going to talk a little bit about some of the industry challenges that we face. And David's going to talk a little bit with Scott about that. And, we're going to have a pretty good discussion on some of the issues we face, but also some of the opportunities to overcome those issues. So, Scott?
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, I appreciate that. So, when you think about the challenges in the industry, and these are not going to be new to anybody who's been in the industry for any amount of time, I think the number one challenge that we face is declining demand. And it's driven by several factors, of course. You've got the growth of EV that is nipping away at fossil fuels each and every day. You've got improved CAFE standards for more fuel-efficient vehicles. You've got the work-from-home hybrid models that are out there now where you just don't have as many commuter miles in some of your major metro areas that you used to. And what declining demand really means is that every single customer that comes to our store is that much more important, because there's no guarantee that you're going to see them again, or that you're going to get another customer to replace that customer. So we have to think about, how do you make the most out of every sale? How do you take every opportunity to wow that customer? And sometimes that is an awesome food program. Sometimes it is the cleanest, safest, brightest facility. It is terrific operations staff that always deliver high customer service experience. And sometimes that is fueling. You think about a commodity such as buying gas. Not everyone likes to, and it's not the most enjoyable experience to go to the gas station and pay $3.50 or $4 a gallon to purchase that fuel. We have to make sure that we are delivering the wow customer experience even at the pump, because you've got that one chance to keep that customer in a declining environment. If you're not delighting that customer, then your competitors are. You got to think about things like, how do we reduce cost so that we are maximizing margin in order to offer, a competitive retail price that draws in customers? We've got to think about, how do we achieve smarter maintenance, more effective, more efficient cost of running our fueling facilities, of running our stores? And how do we think about things like sifting through the noise that's out there to make sure that we totally understand, how we're going to wow that customer, how we're going to compete in a place where declining demand is going to continue to pressure fuel margins. David, you talk a little bit about what Titan does in the area of thinking about demand?
Sure. Our customers, obviously, including Scott, by the way, think about this a lot. How do you make every experience count? And one way folks think about it is like the fueling position on the side of the dispenser is, what shape is that in? Is the equipment in good shape? Do I know that? Do you know right now that every fueling position you have is really in great shape? The tanks aren't shut down, the nozzles of it, all the things, the flow rate's good. Most people the answer is no, they want to change that. How do they know about those things? And then the other part of that is, if I know something's wrong, I need to know a little bit how to fix it really efficiently. Not all problems are created equally. So that kind of smart maintenance that Scott alluded to, where you know what's wrong enough to equip your vendors with the first time fix, the information to make sure it's a first time fix, and you can prioritize the fueling positions that create the most volume, things like that. So it's just really knowing what's happening across all the fueling experiences, which is a non-trivial task, because every fueling position, all the equipment involved, and knowing about that right now, real time. That's the challenge and the opportunity to make every experience count.
With that, that takes us to our next big challenge that I see in this industry, and that is inflation. We've seen inflation in the economy in the U.S., go back to 8% core CPI that we saw last year. But that inflation has just run rampant across our industry. I can remember when a few years ago, you could do a tank job in this industry for maybe $400,000. Now that cost is over $600,000, and there's a long wait time to get tanks on order. I think about the cost of contractors and what it takes to run the maintenance of a store anymore, replace dispensers. Those costs have just gone through the roof in just about every element, every area of our industry, and including labor, right? It's $15 an hour. Seems like that is kind of the de facto minimum wage across our industry now. So when you think about inflation and what it's doing to the industry, it's important that we keep a couple of things in mind. First of all, everything's gotten more expensive. So how do we make sure that we are managing the costs that we can actually control? The maintenance, the taking care of our fueling equipment, people turnover. I can remember back when I was a store manager and it's 20 below zero when I'm outside sticking tanks with big long sticks and wearing a parka. And, the experience that our customers have working for us is critical because we can't afford turnover. That is one of those inflationary challenges that we're going to try to maintain. So how do you improve your employee experience, whether they're working in your maintenance group, your compliance group, your operations teams at your stores, et cetera, et cetera. Controlling the maintenance costs. When you think about what it takes now to recalibrate meters and the dispenser, to replace nozzles and breakaways, taking care of the fueling equipment at our stores has just gotten more and more expensive. And then think about ancillary costs that we incur this industry, like what we saw last year, the year before. We saw a rampant rise in fuel theft across this industry. I've seen U-Haul trucks pull up over top of tank pads and lower pumps down into fill tubes to try to steal gasoline from stations. People invent mechanisms now to basically put your pumps into bypass mode so that they can pump gas for free. I mean, the amount of fuel theft in the industry, it's another one of those costs that make it harder for us to do business and put pressure on us to look at every other way that we can. So control the costs where you can, try to put pressure back on inflation. And at the end of the day, you're able to deliver a better customer experience because you're keeping your cost base down. David, what are your thoughts?
So I would add that, our customers thinking about how they use technology, how we help them use technology to solve the problems would be, first and foremost, automation, streamlining manual processes, getting rid of manual processes in general, automated workflow, interfaces to not only systems, but third parties, whether they be carriers or consultants or repair vendors, kind of having that automated workflow across the enterprise. Second area would be remote fix, right? So tools that allow you to remotely triage and fix issues with the equipment that drives the cost. As we know, most of the costs for C-stores are related to maintenance are the fuel systems, right? And the associated equipment. How do I minimize the cost of that? Cutting through the noise is important. There's a lot of alarms out there for different equipment. How do I understand what's a true positive and a false positive? How do I then double down on getting the true positives fixed quickly that have the most impact? So there's so much data, too much data, cutting out the noise. What's important? How do I minimize the time down and fix that quickly? And the combination of those things as we try to reduce inflation, are obviously related to fuel theft. I think as inflation, the prices go up, theft goes up, and there's anomaly detection kind of techniques out there that kind of get you there. The key is obviously time to detect for fuel theft. It's not sufficient to do it the next day, right? So again, I think kind of automation, remote tools, cutting through the alarm, the alarm noise, get really efficient and cost effective and reducing your costs.
That's a good point. And I think that takes us to our third industry challenge that I see, which is really around the aging equipment and assets in our industry. And if you think about 150,000 C-store/gas stations in the U.S., 80% of those were built over 20 years ago. I mean, our assets are aging. Not all of us have a brand new shiny, box that we've just built in the last few years. So you think about the age of your tanks, the age of your dispensers, the product lines running from your tanks to those dispensers, and trying to keep that stuff in compliance and ensuring that in a world of aging equipment, we still have our hand on things like compliance and the costs that kind of go into all of that stuff. We can't certainly just afford to run out and replace every piece of fuel equipment on our forecourt. So we've got to be smart about how we manage that cost. Those things are more susceptible to leakage, more susceptible to, compliance issues, flow rate issues on the nozzles, meter drift, and are we giving away product or are we holding back too much product from our customers? At the end of the day, if you're doing that, you're not delivering a good customer experience. You're not delivering that wow customer experience that's going to keep people coming back to you. So, look at things like, what are the flow rates going through your nozzles? Or the customer, if it's cold outside, I do not want to sit there and just watch the ticker on your meter go by so slowly that I'm dreading stopping at your gas station. So are you monitoring those things? Are you paying attention to that customer experience at the forecourt? Are you looking at things like your meter drift and recalibration? How are you ensuring that every gallon that you give to a customer is a true gallon, and you're not shorting them or giving away too much on the other side? And how do you make sure that at the end of the day, your aging equipment and your assets are not holding you back from delivering that wow customer experience, even at the forecourt? David, what do you think?
So I'd add to what's been said already that beyond, obviously, you want to make sure there's a good customer experience. You got to be able to sort of detect that and analyze it. But the equipment wears out, right? And so we have some of our leading customers, subscribing to this notion of like, I can predict when the equipment fails. Like there's a wear out function. The equipment, if you have the right data and the right models, you can, the equipment's degraded, the equipment's failed, when is that going to happen in the future? Most of the equipment in our space is sort of has a wear out function. And I think it's super useful. You can plan for maintenance by knowing when it's going to wear out approximately and when you need to take action versus waiting for it to fail. Like you want to, that's kind of important. And then getting back to what, again, we said before, just understanding how good or bad the experience is with the fueling position and all the equipment that's required to deliver that fueling experience. Super important. And then, certainly on the compliance side and leak detection and knowing all your assets and the age of the assets. And so that, again, the wear out function, the age of the assets, there's real-time data that can help you predict when certain things fail. And then there's also profiles of the equipment that you need to manage from an asset management perspective, manage closely. So those things together, I think, help us manage kind of aging equipment well.
Which then takes us to our fourth challenge, and that is delivering consistently and avoiding the declining customer experience. And that kind of is a culmination of several of the things that we've talked about so far. But at the end of the day, your competitors are fighting for that customer. As soon as you think you are delivering a wow experience, somebody else is delivering a better experience than you are, either through their loyalty, through their customer offer, better food menus, better seamless experience, keep customers moving. All of those kinds of things are critical to the way that we treat and think about the customer experience, including some of those things I mentioned before, like how are the flow rates on your nozzle? Are you focusing on meter calibration to make sure your customer's not buying 15 gallons from you and paying for 16 gallons? The customer expectations are going up. We're a convenient society. There's social media. The last thing you can really afford is to not deliver on that customer experience, and you're likely going to pay the price for it in social media somewhere. So you got to think about brand loyalty. And I think about brand loyalty as the quality of the experience and the consistency of the offer. And that is key. It's not about delivering that wow experience once every 3 times or once every 2 times even, because it's got to be when you have a consistent offer and it's an offer that resonates with your customer, that is what equates to brand value. And all of what we're trying to do in this industry is improve our brand, deliver that customer experience for the betterment of that community and for our own performance results. So when you think about increasing the sales and the frequency, duration of any fueling experience, they can have an equally negative effect as much as having positive effect.
I would add that some of our customers understand this really well. The notion of the experience economy has been around for 20 years, right? People expect a good shopping experience. And for C-stores, the shopping experience begins most of the time in the forecourt, and it goes into the store. So being really thoughtful of it, increasing that rate of 1/3 to maybe more than that to go inside the store. But probably the worst thing you can do, and this is someone who's in store ops or even the marketing folks would agree, like you can't have a bad fueling experience and expect them to go inside the store. It's almost, it might be the most valuable thing you can do as a retailer, or one of them would be to make sure that you have a really good fueling experience, because like 80% of the people go there for for fuel first or something like that. What does that mean? Just understanding, we talked about before, what the fueling position's like, what that experience is like, being able to sort of really accurately measure it and know what it is. And then putting programs in place and people and process and technology around minimizing both the frequency and the duration of those bad feeling experiences. Again, most of our customers are on the journey to kind of figure this out in terms of like measuring it and responding to it. And I think the innovators are thinking about it more, but it has a huge impact on the bottom line, because if you can't fix the customer feeling experience, the rest of the experience will suffer. And conversely, probably one of the bigger returns on in technology investment is to improve that customer feeling experience, because it not only has an effect on increased fuel sales, like if the tank shut down and it shouldn't be shut down, you're losing regular sales, but they're not going inside. So it's a really interesting area. And some of the kind of the more leading edge customers are all about this, and they already have a customer shopping experience person, so to speak, kind of like focused inside the store, and then like getting more thoughtful about the holistic experience.
I think if you take all of those things that you said, David, layer that on top of our first 4 challenges, that leads me to what I think is our 5th challenge in this industry, which is really around the emerging technology and using the data at our disposal. I think back, I've been doing this a long time, right? I've got 30 years in this industry now. And I look back at, even what the technology was 10 years ago. There's new pricing technologies. There's new optimization technologies for this. There's all kinds of technologies that have emerged in this industry over the last 10 years. And the amount of data available to us is just exponentially greater than what it was just a few years ago. I read an article not too long ago that says the amount of data created in this world doubles every 2 years. So you just think about the amount of data created now, whether it's a TikTok video or YouTube or even a text or some kind of data stream coming from a piece of technology that you have in your environment. That data is constantly on the grow. And if we think about what we do with data, data is designed to do 3 things, right? Data is either going to make us smarter, it's going to make us better, or it's going to make us more money. That is the key, is how do you take the data, derive the insights that leads to actionable strategies, things that are going to make you better in this industry. It's going to help you win that customer. It's going to help you keep that customer. And at the end of the day, it's going to make you a better, more successful marketer in this industry. I just think about the way loyalty has grown over the last few years. The loyalty commerce platform, the ability to, order your lunch and dinner right off of this thing, pay for it. You show up to the curb, somebody delivers it to your car, or you just use Uber Eats or DoorDash, have it delivered. The amount of technology available to us is amazing, but the amount of data is daunting. And if you don't have the right way to read through that data, get through the noise, whether it's compliance alarms and shut down stuff on your fueling facility, whether it's errant data points that are not necessarily telling you or delivering some kind of false positive, there's a lot of places in our industry where the data can do great things for us. But if it's too much, and if you're not reading it correctly, it's either going to give you poor insights. It's not going to give you the actionable intel you need. You might end up making poor decisions from it. Or at the end of the day, analysis by paralysis by analysis, I think I said that backwards, might actually freeze you into not making the decision that you should have. So reading the real-time data, getting the insights behind it so that you're making the right decisions is going to help grow your business. I believe that's one of the top industry challenges for us. David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think let me talk a little bit about kind of what's changed since we started Titan Cloud Software and the technology. So cloud computing, right? We were one of the early ones in 2012. What cloud computing allows you to kind of capture data at scale, the IoT, the kind of real-time data, the number of sensors that are having the data available has grown exponentially. So now you can collect that data almost in real-time fashion. I would say for folks on the call, if your organization isn't thinking about things like anomaly detection and optimization and talking in terms of time to detect and false positive rates and true positive rates, then you're sort of missing the boat a little bit, right? So there's so much data out there, but you're like, what's the use case? What am I trying to detect? You got to go way beyond the cold filtering or heuristics. There's statistical models to apply for different anomaly detection or optimization. A lot of what we do in this industry is detecting anomalies of different types. And then it's like, how quickly can you do that? And what's the level of confidence for the, kind of probability of detection? What's the false positive rate? Super important. Things as simple as flow rate, right? The traditional way of doing flow rate is always wrong because the duration of these transactions always includes wait time. So how do I separate out the time that I'm actually dispensing versus the time that I'm doing something else. So you get an accurate flow rate. Just applying algorithms that are enabled by cloud computing to the data that we can get real time, so you get an accurate answer. It's a true positive. I'm not measuring things wrong. So there's some technology enablement going on, and then customers starting to think about the time to detect, the probability of false alarms across a wide variety of business use cases. I think is important for everyone to just start thinking a little bit. Again, I play a data scientist on TV. But thinking a little bit like that is important because, at the end of the day, it's all this data. There's an algorithm. It's not like a filter or a heuristic. That's essentially, that's better than nothing, but it's not a substitute to an actual statistical learning kind of approach, whether it be machine learning or other things that actually gives you a compelling answer that's right, and they can do it really quickly. So those are some technology trends that people are thinking about. But everybody's leveraging the real-time data. There's a journey, step 0 might be Power BI, right? Step 4 is machine learning, but like in between there, leveraging that data to make decisions quickly is the key part. Time to detect. It needs to be real time. It's not useful many times, like the next day, what's happening. I need to know now what's happening.
It's a great analysis. I think about the way that I've been in this industry a long time, David, and I think about how, seeing that data come to life, the false positives, the getting the right data at the right time. I think of like specific example. And on the next slide here, I want to show you something that when we think about meter calibrations, meter drift, in our industry, this is a real dynamic. We all know it. Meters that control the flow of an exact gallon coming out of your dispensers, they drift over time. They get a lot of usage. They can give away too much. They can give away too little. When you have any number of significant number of stores, it gets really, really expensive to go out and pay, for an AccuMeasure, for a Cromco to come out and calibrate those dispensers. You really need to focus in on the right data at the right time to make sure that you're controlling the maintenance expense and at the same time delivering on that superior customer experience that we referenced earlier. So this is an example here where we had some specific stores, specific meters, where we've been able to take enough transactional data over time and run those exact gallons that went through there and identify places where meter drift was occurring and said, wow, we were actually giving away too much product to these dispensers. If you're still calibrating your stores back to the old, the legal standard of 1% of sales plus or minus 130 gallons, that leaves a whole lot of room to be giving away a ton of money on meter calibration. But this allows you to focus in on the places where you need to do the calibration. Maybe you've got 32 meters at an average gas station convenience store, but maybe only 6 or 8 of them are giving away product or are significantly out of tolerance. Well, identify those exact meters and go send the tech specific to that position and fix the problems that need to be fixed. Don't worry about the other 24 meters. If they're in tolerance and the data says it's not giving away a gallon, it's not keeping anything, then at the end of the day, you're making a better customer experience, you're controlling your maintenance expense, and you're able to zero in on the real-time data that you need to make worthwhile decisions. That's just an example.
I'll just add really briefly that it's a pretty hard math problem to solve because it's not sufficient to know that the meters are drifting by product, right? It's what meter is important, because you could have the 36 meters, you might have 32 of them are kind of maybe keeping a little product, but there's 4 of them that are giving away a ton of product, and you can't tell at the product level. You have to have it at the meter level. So we have, which we think is an innovation, to do this with software to get it down to the meter level. And I mean, it's sort of like the meters are stealing from you. So that's bad. It's meter theft almost, right? Meter error loss, we call it. But the meters are stealing from you, and it's not sufficient to have it. Well, to have any concept of meter drift requires a certain amount of analytics, but to have it at the product is not sufficient. Anyway, so good stuff. Keep going, man.
Another good example of using real-time data is when it comes to demand and what's happening at your stores today. I think about whether you're using PDI or factor, or you name the back office system or the BI application, Power BI, or any other package, that data is delayed. You're not going to know how a store is doing at this moment without looking at a tank gauge. And when I think about getting readings from a tank gauge that is looked and compared against a 3-week trend for that same exact time period. Today is Thursday. It is after 2:30 p.m. How has my day performed today up to 2:30 p.m. versus the last 3-week history? And I can look and I can say, wow, okay, this store is down 10% against its 3-week average. Does that mean I need to implement a more precise pricing strategy for this time of day? Do I have a competitor trying to game me with some kind of day part pricing strategy? But it gives me the ability to say, how's that store performing today? And even at a larger scale, rolling it up to a market or a DMA level to say, how is Baltimore performing today versus the Washington, D.C. metro area? So, being able to execute on a pricing strategy based on today's need. Now, I might know that it's raining cats and dogs today. And if it's a weather-related event that's pulling down demand, I'm less likely to run and drop prices or do stuff like that. Or if my demand is doing well today, if I see that the store's up 10%, maybe I won't be so quick to drop prices, because then I can hold on to a little bit of margin. But that's an example of real-time demand insights. Keith, go to the next bullet for me. And we think about forecasting. When you're forecasting that demand, you're using the Titan tool for logistics purposes, or you're thinking about, am I going to get the truck to the store in time? Is the store going to run out at exactly 5 p.m.? Is it going to make it till 6 p.m.? Being able to forecast that demand in some way that gives me meaningful insight into how I'm planning my logistics function across my network of sites is really, really important use of real-time data. Next bullet for us, Keith. And then, we're really trying to outperform the competition, right? What we want to do is we want to be better than the next guy. And if we can take data, use the insights, make the actionable decisions that come out of it, then absolutely we're going to perform better than our competition. At the end of the day, my gallons may be down. I've talked to several fuel marketers this year. They said the summer demand season just wasn't there this year. It never came to fruition, the gallons that we've seen. And forget about pre-COVID type of demand. We'll never see that again, at least not in the near term. But I want to be better than my competition. If the market says that EIA says demand is down 2%, are my gallons within that range? Am I feeling comfortable? I'm just trying to beat my competition. Next bullet for us, Keith. Think about your customer incentives and what you're doing to try to drive a customer onto your forecourt. Every customer visit, it's another chance to wow that customer. So, using data insights, maybe it's a loyalty app. Maybe it's understanding your customer experience. Maybe it's a net promoter score. But whatever it is, you're trying to take data and using it in a way to incentivize that customer to visit your store. Maybe it's by lowering prices. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's not the answer. Maybe it's about delivering a better customer experience that's going to keep your customers coming back. And then we think about market and consumer trends. I've heard this from marketers before, and it blows my mind. Is we need gallons. Let's just go drop all of our stores 10 cents. What a great idea. That's the best pricing strategy ever. So, think about market and consumer trends. The day of random price decisions or blanket price decisions just doesn't necessarily make sense. If we're taking real-time data insights, we're seeing exactly where the problem is, but then go focus on the problem. Take care of the issue where you've got soft demand. Take care of the issue where you've got soft gallons, and it's not warranted by a drop in consumer trends or in the market. And then that leads to the last bullet on this page, which is about identifying facility issues early. And it all ties back to that customer experience. But if you've got aging equipment, you've got an opportunity here to find situations and find issues early. Maybe it's a pipeline leak detection alarm that shut off your full fueling equipment. Maybe it's the fact that you're getting ready to run out or a submerge shut off. Find those issues quickly, get the real-time data, take some action about it. Everything on this page is about the real-time demand insights, and it's all geared towards trying to deliver that customer experience. David, what are your thoughts?
So, from a product and technology perspective across our customers, I think, by the way, it sounds easy, real-time data. It's not, right? And so most people are still operating on that daily thing, like the daily day and a half after the fact. And what we were able to do for Scott and Wills is real-time, insights. And we didn't quite understand how valuable it was, Scott. So now we're going to come back with a price. Just kidding. But we're trying to architect the product the best way possible, which is, we're sampling the data X times a minute or every few minutes. And then you're kind of building the model and all in real time is just kind of a best practice way of doing it. I'd say more customers are becoming aware of the value of this. So they're streaming data to us, we're streaming data to them. But, architecturally from a product perspective, we're trying to make sure that we can act on that in real time. So again, we've been around since 2012, cloud computing, that architecture, it's not batch processing. It's not the way most systems are built in this industry. So we're trying to build it that way so we can, receive the data, consume the data real time, deploy insights real time. And again, more of the industry is going that way. I think some of the manufacturers are finally getting the memo, and you have APIs from data feeds from different pieces of equipment you can consume. So I think everybody's moving in the right direction. It's just taking advantage of it. It's a huge difference, right? Think of just the forecasting, or just getting sales from your ERP the day after you've made a price change, right? In the morning, it's not acceptable, right? So real-time data consumption, the real-time architecture to model the results. And we're trying, I think, again, not all of our customers are there. I mean, you think of the worst possible way of getting data would be file transfers, FTP, APIs are better, streaming data is best. And for us, we can also just go get the data directly in real-time fashion. But opening up those data connectors, if you will, super important. And more people are becoming aware of how important it is. But it has just, as Scott's laid out for you, huge impact on the operations, just knowing what's happening in real time. Just knowing, like tomorrow, it's useless, right? You need to know this afternoon for what happened at noon, right? So we're with our customers on their journey as they kind of get more digitally oriented, more real-time data. And I think it's just people are kind of finally thinking about it the right way because, historically they've been in this sort of ERP prison of getting batch, getting the next day, because the ERP systems are all kind of daily batch processing oriented. They're not this give data real time. So we're excited about this trend, and we're trying to help all the customers that we can kind of take advantage of it as needed.
Great.
Well, excellent. It's interesting to hear meters come up again. I think it was 10, 15 years ago, both of the big dispenser folk in the industry we're going to be solving that with their newest generation of meters. And I think it turned out to be a much more difficult problem to solve than was anticipated at the time, to say the least. So it's interesting to see a more proactive way of looking at it as opposed to something that's strictly reactive across the board. A few questions, I'd like to start what you're really outlining, and it's a case with a lot of technology in the industry, both inside the box at the forecourt, is kind of a new way to do business for a lot of operations. How easy is it to kind of get a solution of this nature implemented, but also get, say, buy-in from people on staff, maybe even up through the leadership that might be wondering whether or not it's worth the disruption that's caused anytime you add tech?
Sure. I'll start that. I think from a product guy's perspective, I think getting connectivity to the devices is pretty straightforward. And then we can just show you the results, right? It's sort of like a pilot. Here, look at it and go from there. It's a good thing. Things like ATGs have been around for decades. There's well-established, secure ways of connecting to them, things like that. So we would sort of say, give us the data connection, and then let's show you. And it's irrefutable proof. And then once we know what's going on, we can show you all these insights about what's happening at your site. So that's not super hard. I think depending upon the person that's wanting to do the change, that how do you get ROI? How do you get business approval?
And I would imagine once an operation starts seeing the benefits, the person involved can probably concentrate a little bit more on more creative endeavors perhaps, think a little bit more about more strategic things than just trying to, make sure that the compliance report is ready for the next time.
Yeah, that's a good point, Keith. I think the customers that have implemented this, you kind of go from this reactive spreadsheets, whatever, to like proactive. You sort of know what's happening beforehand. But the issues, the issues, the system tells you the issues, so to speak. You're working them. It scales your team fundamentally. Right? Technology scales teams across a variety of functions and industries, right? And so we're just trying to scale the team, things like compliance, and giving them better insights so you can just be more efficient and more effective. And that's the idea. Don't do fighting. Get out of firefighting, and fire prevention is an analogy, or there's a lot of analogies, but something like that.
And again, anybody, feel free to ask questions. We're getting a little tight, but want to make sure if you have something. If not, we'll make sure questions get answered after the fact. But how easy is the interface? I mean, it was commented on earlier that the amount of data doubles, every couple of years that is going in. You can be buried under a pile of data. Do you have to be a statistician to work through this stuff, or how easy is it to take this data and do actionable activities with it?
Yeah, that's a battle every day, right? Sort of how do you distill the essence of what's important in a UI and a UX to give people what they need? And so we're getting more and more creative in terms of we're hiring actually third-party UX that are trained in human factors. I think you want human factor trained people to kind of give you, that's a huge challenge, and we acknowledge it, because otherwise it's just too hard, right? And feedback from customers is super important as well. I think Scott and his team were really valuable to give us feedback on how to craft the UX for some of the stuff they're using around delivery planning and forecasting. And you're just trying to meet the use case as efficiently as you can. I don't know, Scott, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think David, you probably learned that pretty early on about us, that you're going to get feedback. I think when I look at how the tool is developed and how we've worked together to kind of create a more usable UX platform, which is what we're talking about, because we have three primary, think about three primary stakeholders. Well, really four primary stakeholders in the Titan Cloud environment, because you've got your compliance and maintenance team doing things. You've got a logistics team that's in there doing things. You've got area managers who access this. It's all in the cloud. And of course, you've got your haulers. And for us, we use all third-party haulers. So we've got the Keenans and the Corluzos of the world that are also accessing the platform. So, we're getting feedback from everybody to say, okay, fewer clicks, get the right data at the right time. How are you ensuring that it's a usable insight and not just a bunch of data spitting at, but the so what? So I do think the UX, the user interface has actually come a long way, at least since we've started using the tool.
Yeah. And how often are you logging in to check it out? It sounds like you had an example we discussed offline about just a straight observation one day that the market was down. So how often is it like texting with the younger kids out there, where once you get it, you're always using it? Or
yeah, I know that me and my team are in there nonstop, partially for planning logistics and making sure that your stores are staying wet and that you're not running on fumes anywhere. But also we're in there looking at the insights around demand and reporting on things like what percentage of our stores are actually beating their 3-week average today. And why is that, right? Is it our value day where we're offering, 5 cents off to our customers because, they've come to know us for that? Or is there some other factor driving that demand number today? But I'm real big about wanting to know on any given time during the day where that demand trend is. And if it's weak, why is it weak? Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe I screwed up pricing. Maybe I'm sitting out of the market in certain places. But this gives you that insight to make sure that you are, you're making those decisions all throughout the day. So to answer your question, Keith, yeah, me and my team are in there nonstop all throughout the day.
And Scott, I'm sorry, David, have you noticed we've had the higher prices, since the Ukraine war began, and now we have inflation working into it. Have you noticed on the retail side anything that you really can say are really inflation-specific behaviors among consumers so far?
Yeah, well, we certainly learned a lot about demand destruction in 2022, didn't we? Yeah, for the first time in history, you see $5 gas prices, and what's really amazing was the amount of time that it took to go from $4 a gallon to $5 a gallon was warp speed. And we really, as a country, have never spent time in that pricing region. And we saw that demand destruction that I saw estimated, 4 to 8%, depending on region of the country and where you were. So there's definitely something in there that says, hey, at certain points, and I believe that's kind of $4 for regular unleaded, probably $5 when you start getting up into the premium and the diesel categories, you will see customers change those behaviors. And then you've got to adjust. You've got to say, hey, my gallons are down a little bit, but maybe that's okay. Maybe that's just the change in demand, or that's a consumer pattern, behavior pattern change, and not just overreact and start just plummeting price everywhere. So that's kind of some of those things that we've learned over the past couple of years.
And I think it was a good observation as well that, a lot of retail is so focused on the customer experience inside the store that sometimes you lose track of the first touch point with the customer on the fueling island. And, they may come back a couple times, but you're right. You irritate somebody enough, they'll not go into the store just to spite you at that point. I'm not giving you another penny. This was such a pain in the rear end here.
Yeah.
So.
But, I think David said something earlier, but it's absolutely true. And I've heard this and seen this before. 1/3 of your customers at the forecourt are ultimately going to come into your store and buy something. But I'm betting you, for the customer that has a poor experience on the forecourt, the number is going to be a lot less than 1/3, right? So it is about that wow experience from the time they pull into the lot to the time they, drive off the lot.
Great. Are there any additional questions? I know we're getting close on time. I think we stretched a bit because we had a slight interruption at the start. Are there any additional questions? My only remaining question would be, how easy is this to integrate into your other enterprise solutions that you might be using for different aspects of your business?
I mean, from our perspective, we're trying to be a platform for fuel and operations, for maintenance and for environmental. But we play well. Right? So if you're using like a big maintenance program like a service channel, so we have APIs to those software. We also feed, if you're doing if you have your own trucks and dispatching your TMW, we can feed those systems as well. So we're trying to be a platform, but we're also sending, we prefer APIs with other systems that you might need to do your work. And then we have a connector with PDI. And so we're trying to kind of solve this fuel asset optimization around, kind of environmental risks, maintenance costs and uptime, and then fuel operations. And then for the use cases we don't solve, APIs we have almost 60 APIs that third parties can use to get data back and forth from us. So trying to be constructive across the board.
Well, excellent. And again, for the audience, if you're going to be at the NACS show, Titan Cloud has a booth there as well. I'm sure they'd be happy for you to drop by and talk to some folks and see what they have going on. And if you happen to see me walking around, I'll probably be trying to get from A to B with my hair on fire at the point. But if you want to chat for a few minutes, I'll be happy to speak with you as well. So
I should know what booth we're in. Oh, here it is. So someone sent me. We're in booth 3947, 3947. Happy to have you stop by, and Caroline will give you a free TV or something. Probably not a TV.
Well, excellent. I believe that covers it. Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate it. I had a lot of questions I might ask about the math, but I'd be like a dog watching a television if I started to get into that. So
yeah,
just fascinating stuff, how you can get down to a specific dispenser, a specific meter from what's generally a product in a tank type of way.
I've been told I talk about the math too much, so stop by and ask them to talk about the math.